We often think attraction is built through bold moves, grand gestures, obvious compliments, or the kind of flirting you see in movies where someone swoops in with a clever line and instantly wins someone over. But the truth is, in real life, attraction rarely works that way. The strongest connections are often born in the subtleties, in the things people don't even realize they're doing, yet they leave a lasting impression. Invisible flirting is that silent language we speak without announcing it. It's the smile that lingers half a second longer than expected, the playful spark in your eyes when you're listening, the calm confidence in your body language that makes someone lean in without knowing why. These techniques are invisible not because they can't be seen, but because they're so natural and subtle that they don't look like techniques at all. They feel effortless. And that's the beauty of it. When attraction doesn't feel forced, when it feels like two people are just naturally drawn to each other, that's when it's the most powerful. So today, I want to share with you the invisible flirting techniques that create instant attraction, not through overthinking, not through being loud or pushy, but through small, magnetic shifts in the way you show up. Attraction begins long before a word is spoken. In fact, some of the most powerful signals that spark instant chemistry are never verbalized at all. When you walk into a room, people pick up on your energy before they even notice the details of your outfit or the cleverness of your words. This is why subtle energy matters more than obvious effort when it comes to creating attraction. It's not about rehearsed lines, it's about the way you make someone feel simply by being present in the moment. Think about the last time you met someone who had that undeniable charisma. Chances are, it wasn't because they said something groundbreaking or overly impressive. It was likely the way they carried themselves, the ease they projected, the quiet confidence that drew you in without demanding your attention. That's what invisible flirting really is. An aura that makes people curious about you before they even fully understand why. The mistake many people make is assuming they need to work hard to be noticed. They think they have to tell a joke every few seconds, give compliments constantly, or make themselves the loudest person in the room. But the harder you try to be noticed, the more people sense that neediness. Attraction is not born out of desperation. It's born out of assurance. When you can sit comfortably in silence, when you can enjoy yourself without needing validation, people are naturally pulled toward you. That subtle energy tells them, I'm already enough. I don't need to perform for you. And that is one of the most magnetic signals you can send. This is why eye contact is such a powerful tool. Not the obvious kind where someone stares too intensely, but the softer version. A glance that lingers just long enough to create a spark, then looks away with a small smile. That single moment communicates so much confidence, interest, and a playful challenge. It says, I see you, and I'm not afraid to show it. That's far more impactful than a rehearsed line because it's primal, instinctive, and deeply human. Invisible flirting lives in those moments that feel unscripted, almost like a secret language between two people. Tone of voice is another example of how subtle energy works. Think about how differently the same sentence can land depending on how it's delivered. A calm, steady tone conveys control. A playful inflection adds charm. When someone speaks with a voice that isn't rushed or strained, it carries a presence that immediately sets them apart. People lean in because they feel at ease, like they're in the presence of someone who isn't trying too hard. Even pauses in speech are powerful. Most people rush through conversations out of nervousness, but those who know how to slow down, to let silence breathe for a moment, often come across as more confident and alluring. Silence doesn't expose you, it magnifies you because it shows you aren't afraid of space. Then there's body language. Invisible flirting thrives here because our bodies often reveal more than our words. Standing tall without being rigid, leaning in slightly when someone speaks, keeping your shoulders relaxed. These are signals of calm confidence. On the other hand, fidgeting, crossing your arms, or making yourself small communicates insecurity. Attraction blooms when your body tells the story that you're open, receptive, and comfortable in your skin. Even something as simple as the pace of your movements can change the way people feel about you. Moving with ease, rather than jitteriness, signals composure. People want to be around those who feel grounded because it makes them feel grounded too. What's fascinating about subtle energy is that it doesn't demand attention, yet it effortlessly commands it. Imagine two people entering the same room. One is loud, cracking jokes, trying to make everyone notice them. The other is calm, smiling softly, making eye contact, fully present with whoever they're speaking to. Who do you think people will feel more drawn to after the initial noise dies down? The one who radiates quiet assurance. Because that's the kind of energy that lasts, that feels safe and yet exciting at the same time. That's the paradox of invisible flirting. It's understated, but it leaves the deepest impact. A key part of this energy is how you focus your attention. Attraction is created when you give someone the gift of being truly seen. Most people are half present, distracted by their phones, or waiting for their turn to speak. But when you listen with genuine interest, when your eyes soften and your body leans in slightly, you communicate a kind of presence that's rare. It makes the other person feel special, which in turn makes you magnetic. The irony is that by not trying to impress, you end up impressing the most. Invisible flirting is never about proving your worth, it's about embodying it so naturally that others can't help but notice. Think of it like a dance of subtle cues. You smile, but not too broadly. You hold eye contact, but then look away just enough to keep them guessing. You speak with warmth, but with pauses that allow them to step into the space. All of these tiny adjustments create an atmosphere where attraction feels inevitable, like it's happening on its own rather than being engineered. People don't walk away thinking, that person was trying so hard to flirt with me. They walk away thinking, there was just something about them I can't quite explain. That mystery is exactly what makes invisible flirting so powerful. To embody this, you don't need to learn tricks or memorize steps. What you need is to shift your energy from I need to be liked to I'm already enough, and I'm simply sharing that with whoever I connect with. When that shift happens, your presence transforms. You don't fumble for the right words because your energy does the talking. You don't overthink your movements because your calmness speaks volumes. That's when attraction stops being something you chase and becomes something you naturally inspire. The truth is, people rarely remember the exact words you said, but they always remember how you made them feel. Invisible flirting is about mastering that feeling, the subtle energy that pulls someone closer without them even realizing why. And once you learn to project it, you'll see how effortless attraction can become. If subtle energy sets the foundation for attraction, micro behaviors are the sparks that bring it to life. These are the little things that most people overlook, but that make the biggest difference in how someone perceives you. They're not grand gestures or dramatic moves. They're the small, almost invisible signals that communicate charm, interest, and playfulness without ever needing to be announced. What makes micro behaviors so effective is that they bypass logic and go straight to emotion. They make someone feel something before they even have time to analyze why. Think about the power of a glance. Not just any glance, but one that lingers just a fraction longer than usual. It's subtle, it's fleeting, but it immediately creates a jolt of awareness between you and the other person. You're saying, without saying a word, I see you, and you matter enough for me to pause here. That moment plants a seed of curiosity. The other person might not even consciously realize it, but their brain starts to register you differently. The beauty of this is that it feels unforced. It doesn't look like a technique. It just looks like connection. Playful teasing is another micro behavior that ignites attraction, not the kind that puts someone down, but the kind that shows light-hearted confidence. Maybe they say something serious and you respond with a cheeky grin and a playful twist of their words. Or maybe you notice a small detail about them and comment on it with a hint of humor. These little moments break the monotony of everyday conversation and signal that you're not afraid to have fun, that you're comfortable enough to create a playful vibe. People are drawn to those who make them feel lighter, and micro behaviors are one of the quickest ways to do that. Then there's mirroring. When you subtly mirror someone's body language, you create a subconscious sense of harmony. If they lean forward, you lean in slightly. If they smile softly, you return it. This doesn't mean copying them robotically. It's about being attuned to their rhythm and reflecting it back in a natural way. The result is that they feel understood and comfortable without even realizing why. That comfort is incredibly attractive because it creates the feeling that you're on the same wavelength. One of the most overlooked micro behaviors is the way you listen. Most people listen just enough to reply, but invisible flirting is about listening in a way that makes someone feel deeply heard. A slight nod, a warm expression, The occasional of acknowledgement, all of these tiny cues show engagement. Pair that with maintaining eye contact while they're speaking, and suddenly you've created an intimacy that words alone can't achieve. It tells the other person, I'm here with you, fully present. That presence can be intoxicating, especially in a world where distractions are everywhere. Even the way you use touch, when appropriate, is a powerful micro-behavior. A light touch on the arm to emphasize a point, a playful nudge when you're laughing together, or brushing past them gently, all of these small gestures create a physical spark that words could never replicate. What makes touch so powerful is its subtlety. It doesn't need to be prolonged or obvious. In fact, the briefness often makes it more electrifying. It's like a whisper compared to a shout. It lingers because it's not overdone. Your smile, too, is one of the most underrated flirting tools. Not a forced grin or a polite smile, but the kind that arrives slowly, naturally, as though it's just for them. When you smile in response to something they've said, especially if you let your eyes soften at the same time, it creates an intimate bubble. It tells them, I enjoy being in this moment with you. A smile is such a small thing, but it has the power to shift the entire energy of an interaction. Timing also plays a role in micro-behaviors. Knowing when to pause before answering, when to lean back and give space, when to lean forward and close it. These timing choices are invisible flirting at its finest because they make the interaction dynamic rather than flat. Think of it like music. Too many notes at once become noise, but the right pauses create rhythm. Attraction works the same way. It's often not about what you do, but when you do it. Another micro-behavior is creating curiosity with your expressions. Instead of reacting predictably, you might raise an eyebrow when they say something surprising or tilt your head slightly as though you're intrigued. These small cues show personality without you needing to spell it out. They keep the interaction alive because they suggest that you're not just passively absorbing what's happening. You're engaged, you're playful, and you're adding texture to the moment. The beauty of micro-behaviors is that they work beneath the surface. The other person might not even be able to pinpoint why they feel drawn to you, but they'll sense something different in the way you interact. They'll walk away thinking, that was fun, or there's something about them I can't shake. That's because micro-behaviors bypass the rational checklist most people use when sizing someone up. They speak directly to the emotional brain, the part that responds to chemistry rather than logic. But here's the key: micro-behaviors only work when they're authentic. You can't fake presence, you can't force a natural smile, you can't rehearse genuine curiosity. The reason they're so powerful is because they arise from being fully engaged in the moment. When you're truly interested in someone, these small gestures happen effortlessly. The mistake people make is trying to manufacture them, which makes them look staged. The real magic of invisible flirting lies in allowing yourself to be playful, present, and open enough for these micro-behaviors to surface naturally. Attraction is as much about space as it is about connection. Many people fall into the trap of thinking that the more attention they give, the more attractive they'll appear. They text constantly, over-explain, or always try to fill every silence in conversation. What they don't realize is that attraction actually thrives in the gaps, the moments where curiosity is allowed to breathe. Creating space for pursuit is one of the most powerful invisible flirting techniques because it taps into one of the deepest human instincts. We value what we have to lean toward, not what is handed to us without effort. When you give someone too much, too quickly, it can feel overwhelming. Imagine being on the receiving end of non-stop compliments or excessive attention. At first, it might feel flattering, but very soon it becomes suffocating. There's no mystery left, no room for the imagination to play. That's why invisible flirting works best when you create a dance between warmth and restraint. You show interest, but you also know when to step back. You lean in, but you also know when to lean out. This ebb and flow makes interactions exciting because the other person feels both reassured by your presence and intrigued by your absence. One of the simplest ways to create this space is through pacing. If someone texts you, you don't always have to respond immediately. Not because you're playing games, but because you're demonstrating that you have a full life outside of the interaction. That gap of time makes your reply feel more intentional. The other person senses that your attention is valuable, that it's not scattered or desperate. It's the same in conversation. If you're constantly filling every silence, the interaction can feel forced. But when you let silence linger for just a beat longer, you create tension. The good kind of tension that makes the other person want to step in. That tension is what keeps the spark alive. Another way to create space for pursuit is by not over-explaining yourself. When someone asks about your life, give them an answer that's true, but don't feel the need to provide your entire history. Leave some details unsaid, some stories half told. This creates an opening for them to ask more, to lean in out of curiosity. Mystery isn't about being closed off, it's about being selective in what you reveal. Every great story leaves you wanting the next chapter, and attraction works in much the same way. This space also applies to physical presence. When you're in someone's company, you don't always need to hover close. Sometimes, stepping back just a little allows them to move toward you. That simple shift of body language, creating a small physical gap, invites them to bridge it if they want to. It's not about withholding, it's about inviting. Invisible flirting works best when you allow the other person to make moves of their own, rather than trying to orchestrate every step of the interaction. Playfulness can also create this kind of space. When you tease someone lightly or joke in a way that's slightly challenging, you're inviting them to respond, to meet you halfway in the playful exchange. It's not about being aloof or distant, it's about setting up little openings where they get to contribute to the connection. Think of it as throwing a ball instead of handing it over. By tossing it lightly, you give them the chance to toss it back. This back and forth creates momentum, and momentum builds attraction. One of the mistakes people often make is believing that being too available will make them more appealing. But total availability often has the opposite effect. It removes the sense of excitement. If someone knows they can reach you at any time, that you'll drop everything for them, the interaction loses its spark. On the other hand, when your attention is precious, when you're warm and engaged when you're there, but you're not always there, it makes the time together feel more special. It's the scarcity principle in action. People value what feels rare. Not because you're deliberately withholding, but because you genuinely have a life that isn't centered around them. This doesn't mean you play cold or manipulative games. True attraction isn't about creating anxiety in the other person. It's about balancing accessibility with independence. When you show interest but also demonstrate that you're not reliant on their validation, you project self-assurance. That self-assurance is magnetic because it signals that you're choosing to give your attention, not begging for it. Invisible flirting thrives in this balance. It's about being warm enough to spark interest while leaving enough space for the other person to step toward you of their own free will. Think about how this works in nature. Fire needs both oxygen and fuel to burn. Too much oxygen without enough fuel and it fizzles out. Too much fuel without enough oxygen and it suffocates. Attraction works the same way. If you pour in too much without allowing space, it suffocates. But when you strike the right balance, the flame grows naturally. The spaces in between, the silences, the pauses, the little mysteries, become the oxygen that keeps the fire alive. Even in conversation, this technique plays out beautifully. When you're telling a story, you don't have to give every detail. Maybe you stop right at the most interesting part, smile, and say, "I'll tell you the rest another time." That little cliffhanger creates anticipation. Or when they ask a question, instead of giving a long, complete answer, you respond with just enough to intrigue them. These moments invite them to pursue more, to ask, to lean in. That act of pursuit makes them feel invested in the connection, which deepens their attraction. Ultimately, creating space for pursuit is about respecting both yourself and the other person. It's about recognizing that attraction isn't something you force onto someone, it's something you allow to unfold. By holding back just enough, you create room for their curiosity, their effort, and their desire to grow. It's not about withholding love or affection, it's about letting connection build at its own pace. Invisible flirting at its core is not loud, it's not showy, and it's certainly not desperate. It's a quiet confidence that says, "I enjoy this connection, but I don't need it to define me." That balance, warmth mixed with space, is what makes you irresistible. It makes people lean in because they want to, not because you pushed them. And when someone chooses to step into that space you've created, the attraction that follows feels natural, powerful, and lasting. Authenticity is the heartbeat of attraction. You can master body language, you can learn subtle cues, you can play with timing and space, but if what you project isn't rooted in something real, eventually people will sense it. Invisible flirting works because it doesn't look like flirting. It looks like you being unapologetically yourself. The real secret isn't in memorizing techniques, but in embodying who you are so fully that the little things you do naturally become attractive. Authenticity takes away the pressure to perform. It allows you to stop worrying about how you're being perceived and instead focus on expressing what feels true in the moment. Think about the people who leave a lasting impression on you. Chances are, they weren't the ones trying the hardest to be impressive. They were the ones who seemed most at ease in their own skin. Maybe they laughed at their own mistakes instead of trying to cover them up. Maybe they admitted when they didn't know something instead of pretending. Or maybe they shared an opinion with conviction, even if it wasn't the most popular one in the room. That rawness, that lack of pretense, is magnetic because it makes others feel they're seeing the real person behind the mask. Invisible flirting thrives on this kind of energy, where the charm isn't crafted, it's lived. One of the reasons authenticity is so powerful is because it creates trust. When someone senses you're genuine, they let their guard down. They don't feel like they're being manipulated or drawn into a performance. Instead, they feel safe enough to connect. This safety is crucial because attraction without trust often burns out quickly. You might capture someone's attention with clever lines or flashy gestures, but you'll hold it with honesty and realness. The smile that comes from genuine amusement is always more attractive than the one you practice in the mirror. The compliment you give because you truly notice something about them carries far more weight than one delivered just to score points. Authenticity also frees you from comparison. Many people sabotage themselves by trying to act like someone they think is more attractive. They mimic others' humor, style, or charm, but in doing so, they dilute the very qualities that would have made them stand out. Invisible flirting isn't about blending in. It's about highlighting the subtle quirks that make you unique. Maybe it's the way you tell stories, or your dry sense of humor, or your habit of pausing thoughtfully before answering. Those idiosyncrasies aren't flaws. They're your signature. When you embrace them instead of hiding them, you create a presence that can't be replicated. A big part of authenticity is emotional honesty. It doesn't mean unloading every feeling on someone new, but it does mean being willing to show a range of emotions without fear. If something excites you, let your enthusiasm show. If something confuses you, don't be afraid to admit it. If someone makes you laugh, don't hold back the full, genuine laughter. These small moments of honesty are inherently attractive because they show that you're not guarding yourself with layers of performance. People crave realness in a world full of curated images and filtered versions of reality. By being real, you become a rare presence, and rarity is irresistible. The most subtle and invisible flirting technique that comes from authenticity is vulnerability. Vulnerability doesn't mean oversharing or exposing every insecurity. It means letting people see that you're human. It could be something as small as admitting, "I'm terrible at this," with a laugh, or sharing a personal story that reveals your journey rather than just your successes. Vulnerability is attractive because it creates intimacy. It gives the other person permission to be real too. When both people are authentic, the interaction stops being about impressing and becomes about connecting. That shift is what makes attraction feel deep and lasting rather than superficial and fleeting. Another aspect of authenticity in flirting is alignment between your words and your actions. If you say you're confident, but your body language is tense, people feel the disconnect. If you say you're laid back, but you're constantly anxious, they pick up on the contradiction. Invisible flirting becomes truly magnetic when everything lines up, when your tone, your gestures, and your presence all reflect what you genuinely feel. That alignment creates a sense of congruence that draws people in. It feels solid, consistent, and trustworthy, which makes the attraction not only stronger but more sustainable. Authenticity also means knowing your boundaries and sticking to them. Too often, people think that being attractive means agreeing with everything, always being available, or molding themselves into whatever they think the other person wants. But the opposite is true. When you hold your ground with kindness, when you say no where it matters, when you express your true preferences, you project self-respect. That self-respect is incredibly appealing because it shows you value yourself enough not to compromise your identity. Invisible flirting isn't about losing yourself in someone else, it's about inviting them into your world while standing firmly in your own. What's interesting about authenticity is that it actually makes the micro behaviors, the subtle energy, and the space for pursuit even more powerful. When your teasing is genuine, it comes across as playful rather than manipulative. When your silence is authentic, it feels like calm confidence rather than calculated withholding. When your smile is real, it's contagious. Authenticity is the thread that ties all the invisible flirting techniques together and makes them feel effortless. Without it, the techniques look like tactics. With it, they look like charm. Attraction built on authenticity also has the longest shelf life. Tricks can get attention, but they rarely build lasting bonds. Realness, however, creates both instant chemistry and enduring connection. When someone feels they can trust your energy, they relax into the interaction. They don't have to keep guessing whether you're putting on a show, which means they can invest more deeply in the connection. That's why authenticity isn't just another technique. It's the foundation that makes every other technique work. At the end of the day, invisible flirting is about making someone feel something real. And the only way to do that consistently is by being real yourself. You don't need to be the loudest, the flashiest, or the smoothest. You just need to show up as you are, with your quirks, your humor, your honesty, and your humanity. When you do, you'll notice that attraction doesn't feel like a performance anymore. It feels natural, mutual, and undeniable. Authenticity is the invisible signal that says, "This is me, and I'm enough." And when you live that truth, you become the kind of person people can't help but be drawn to.